Let me be direct with you from the outset. What was announced in Moscow on May 14th is not a routine arms transfer. It is not a symbolic gesture of diplomatic support. What was announced is the deployment of the S-600 Prometei air defense system to Iranian territory, a weapons platform so advanced that NATO military planners have spent the past 6 years trying to develop countermeasures against it with limited success. I am looking at the joint statement released by Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu and Iranian Defense Minister Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Ashtiani. The language is diplomatic, but the implications are unmistakable. Russia is providing Iran with the ability to establish an anti-access area denial zone covering the entire Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and significant portions of Iraq, Syria, and the Arabian Peninsula. This is not an incremental improvement over existing Iranian air defenses. This is a generational leap that renders American stealth aircraft vulnerable, cruise missile strikes detectable at ranges exceeding 400 kilometers, and any manned air campaign against Iran exponentially more costly in terms of aircraft losses and pilot casualties. In the next 18 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly what the S-600 system can do, why its deployment to Iran changes the strategic balance in the Middle East permanently, and why the United States Air Force and Navy are quietly revising operational plans that assumed air superiority could be achieved through stealth and standoff weapons. This is the Professor Marandi Report. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively suppressed by defense officials who do not want the American public to understand how drastically the military balance has shifted. Let's start with the S-600 system itself, because most people have no idea what separates it from previous generations of Russian air defense technology. The S-600 Prometei, which translates to Prometheus in English, is Russia's most advanced long-range air defense system. It entered limited operational service with the Russian military in 2025 and represents the culmination of more than a decade of research into defeating stealth aircraft, hypersonic missiles, and advanced electronic warfare. The system consists of multiple radar types operating across different frequency bands, a battle management network that can coordinate dozens of launches simultaneously, and interceptor missiles capable of engaging targets at ranges up to 600 kilometers and altitudes up to 200 kilometers. To put that in perspective, the S-600 can intercept satellites in low Earth orbit. It can track and destroy aircraft flying at speeds exceeding Mach 15. And according to Russian technical specifications that have been analyzed by NATO intelligence agencies, it can detect and engage stealth aircraft, including the F-22, F-35, and B-2 bomber, at ranges that far exceed the effective range of most air-launched weapons those aircraft carry. According to reporting by TASS news agency, and confirmed by statements from Russian military officials, the S-600 uses advanced quantum radar components, distributed sensor networks that share tracking data in real time, and artificial intelligence algorithms that predict target behavior and optimize interceptor trajectories. The system is designed to operate in the most contested electromagnetic environments, meaning it can function effectively even when subjected to intense jamming and electronic attack. Commander Viktor Bondarev, former head of the Russian Aerospace Forces, has stated publicly that the S-600 represents a technological leap comparable to the introduction of jet engines in aviation. I am quoting him directly when he says no existing Western air platform can operate safely within the engagement envelope of this system. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now let's talk about what the transfer of S-600 systems to Iran actually means in operational terms. Announcement number 1, the end of American air superiority in the Persian Gulf. And this one matters more than anything else because it fundamentally alters the assumptions that have governed U.S. military strategy in the Middle East for the past 30 years. Since the Gulf War in 1991, the United States has enjoyed near total air superiority in the Middle East. American and Allied aircraft have been able to operate with minimal risk of being shot down. This superiority has enabled everything from the invasion of Iraq in 2003 to ongoing operations against ISIS and periodic strikes against Iranian-backed militias. The entire American military posture in the region depends on the assumption that U.S. air power can achieve its objectives without prohibitive losses. The S-600 changes that assumption completely. According to analysis published by the Center for Naval Analyses and confirmed by multiple former U.S. Air Force officers, the S-600's engagement envelope is large enough that a single battery positioned near Tehran could threaten aircraft operating over Baghdad. 3 batteries positioned strategically across Iran could create overlapping coverage zones that would make any penetrating strike mission against Iranian nuclear facilities or missile production sites a suicide mission for manned aircraft. The United States currently stations F-22 and F-35 fighters at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. Both locations are within the maximum engagement range of the S-600. If Iran deploys these systems and Russia provides the technical support necessary to integrate them into Iran's existing air defense network, then American aircraft taking off from those bases would be detectable and potentially targetable from the moment they become airborne. That is not a theoretical vulnerability. That is an operational reality that forces a complete rethinking of how the United States projects air power in the region. According to testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee in March 2026, General Charles Brown, Chief of Staff of the United States Air Force, acknowledged that advanced Russian air defense systems pose significant challenges to American operations and that the Air Force is investing heavily in countermeasures and alternative operational concepts. He did not specifically mention the S-600 by name, but everyone in that room knew exactly what he was referring to. The transfer of this system to Iran is the nightmare scenario that U.S. military planners have been warning about for years. And now it is happening. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the cost of any military strike on Iran just increased by an order of magnitude. This is the part that Pentagon budget analysts understand but do not want to explain to Congress. Before the S-600 transfer, military planners assessed that a strike on Iranian nuclear facilities would require approximately 250 aircraft, multiple waves of cruise missile attacks to suppress air defenses, stealth bombers to deliver bunker-buster munitions, and extensive electronic warfare support. The estimated cost of such an operation was approximately $15 billion, with projected aircraft losses in the range of 12 to 18 platforms. Those losses were considered acceptable within the context of preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. But with S-600 systems operational, those projections changed dramatically. According to war game simulations conducted by the RAND Corporation in 2025 and leaked to the Washington Post, the introduction of S-600 air defenses into Iranian territory increased projected aircraft losses by a factor of 3 to 5. Instead of losing 12 to 18 aircraft, the United States could lose 50 to 90 aircraft in a sustained air campaign. Each F-35 costs approximately $80 million. Each F-22 costs approximately $150 million. Each B-2 bomber costs over $2 billion. Losing 90 aircraft would represent a direct monetary loss exceeding $10 billion, not including the operational disruption, loss of pilots, and strategic impact of demonstrating American vulnerability. Stay with me, because this is where the narrative completely changes and where the implications for American credibility become impossible to ignore. The United States has spent decades telling allies that American military power is unmatched and that any adversary who threatens American interests will face overwhelming force. That message depends on the ability to actually deliver overwhelming force at acceptable cost. If Iran can impose losses that make military action politically untenable, then American deterrence credibility collapses. Adversaries around the world are watching. China is watching to see if the United States will accept strategic constraints imposed by Russian air defense systems. Russia is watching to see if arming American adversaries with advanced weapons shifts the balance of power. North Korea, Syria, Venezuela, and every other nation aligned against the United States is watching to see if the era of American military dominance is ending. The S-600 transfer to Iran is not just about Iran. It is a signal to the entire international system that Russia is willing to provide its most advanced military technology to countries that challenge American hegemony. And if Russia is willing to do this for Iran, there is no reason to believe they will not do it for others. Received. That is announcement number 2. Announcement number 3, and this one almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The Saudi-Iranian rapprochement, brokered by China in 2023, is directly connected to this Russian arms transfer. For decades, Saudi Arabia and Iran have been regional rivals competing for influence across the Middle East. The United States maintained close military relationships with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states specifically to counter Iranian power. But in March 2023, China brokered a diplomatic agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran that restored diplomatic relations and committed both nations to reducing regional tensions. At the time, Western analysts dismissed this as a symbolic gesture with limited practical impact. They were wrong. According to reporting by Bloomberg and confirmed by diplomatic sources in the region, Saudi Arabia quietly signaled to the United States in late 2023 that it would not permit its territory or airspace to be used for military strikes against Iran. This was a seismic shift. Any American air campaign against Iran would require access to bases in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates to stage aircraft, conduct refueling operations, and provide logistical support. Without that access, the operational feasibility of large-scale strikes diminishes significantly. Now, with Russia transferring S-600 systems to Iran, Saudi Arabia has additional incentive to maintain its diplomatic rapprochement rather than align with American military action that could provoke Iranian retaliation. The Saudis understand that if the United States launches a strike on Iran and suffers significant aircraft losses due to S-600 air defenses, American credibility will be damaged, and the regional balance will shift further in Iran's favor. From a Saudi perspective, it is strategically safer to maintain neutrality and hedge between American and Iranian power rather than commit fully to either side. The reason this matters is that the United States has lost the regional alliance structure that made military action against Iran viable. According to analysis published by the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, the combination of Chinese diplomatic mediation, Russian arms transfers, and declining American credibility has created a Middle East where U.S. military options are increasingly constrained. Multiple former U.S. diplomats and military officers have stated publicly that any future conflict with Iran would be far more difficult and costly than the wars in Iraq or Afghanistan, and that the American public has no appetite for another decades-long military engagement. They are right, but the national security establishment has not fully accepted this reality. Defense budgets continue to fund capabilities designed for a world where American air superiority is assumed. Military plans continue to envision scenarios where stealth aircraft can penetrate advanced air defenses with acceptable losses. And political leaders continue to threaten military action against adversaries as if the ability to execute those threats has not been fundamentally degraded. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now, let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The public narrative is that Russia is escalating tensions by arming Iran with advanced weapons, and that this represents a threat to regional stability. The actual reality is that Russia is responding to decades of NATO expansion, American military interventions, and Western efforts to isolate and economically strangle Russia through sanctions. From a Russian perspective, providing Iran with the S-600 is a strategic countermove that imposes costs on the United States without direct military confrontation. It creates an anti-access zone in the Middle East that forces American military planners to accept higher risks and costs. And it demonstrates to other nations that aligning with Russia provides tangible security benefits. American officials have publicly condemned the S-600 transfer as destabilizing and have hinted at potential consequences. But those consequences are limited. The United States cannot prevent the transfer through military means without risking direct conflict with Russia. Economic sanctions against Russia are already at maximum levels due to the war in Ukraine and have not changed Russian behavior. And diplomatic pressure has no impact because Russia views its relationship with Iran as strategically vital. So the United States is left issuing strongly worded statements while Russian transport aircraft deliver S-600 components to Iranian air bases. This has not notably changed the delivery schedule. Think carefully about what this represents. When the United States loses the ability to unilaterally impose its will through military force, the entire architecture of American global influence begins to erode. That influence has always rested on 2 foundations: economic power through the dollar system and military power through global force projection. The economic foundation has been gradually undermined by the rise of alternative payment systems, Chinese economic growth, and de-dollarization efforts by nations tired of American financial coercion. Now the military foundation is being challenged by adversaries who have developed technologies and tactics that impose unacceptable costs on American military action. If the United States cannot credibly threaten military strikes against Iran, what message does that send to China regarding Taiwan? What message does it send to Russia regarding Ukraine? What message does it send to North Korea regarding its nuclear program? The answer is that American threats become less credible. And when threats become less credible, adversaries become more bold. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. The British Empire and the dreadnought battleship race. Britain maintained global naval supremacy through massive capital ships. Then submarines, aircraft, and asymmetric warfare made those ships vulnerable, and Britain could no longer afford to maintain its empire. The Soviet Union and the Afghan insurgency. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan expecting a quick victory, but faced an insurgency armed with American Stinger missiles that shot down Soviet helicopters and aircraft. The cost became unsustainable, and the Soviet Union withdrew, contributing to its eventual collapse. The parallel is exact. The United States has maintained military dominance through technological superiority, particularly in air power and stealth. Now adversaries have developed systems that neutralize those advantages and impose unsustainable costs on American operations. The defender is being forced to spend vastly more than the challenger, and the challenger has the strategic patience to wait until the defender exhausts itself. So, where does this leave us? Let me give you three clear paths because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1. The United States develops next-generation technologies that can defeat the S-600 and restore air superiority. This would mean investing heavily in hypersonic weapons, directed energy systems, and artificial intelligence-driven electronic warfare. The Pentagon is pursuing these technologies, but they are years away from operational deployment, and their effectiveness against systems like the S-600 remains unproven. In the meantime, the United States operates in an environment where its existing capabilities are inadequate. Path 2. The United States fundamentally rethinks its military strategy away from manned aircraft and toward unmanned systems, cyber warfare, and economic coercion. This would represent a massive shift in doctrine and would require accepting that the era of American air dominance is over. It would also mean finding alternative ways to project power that do not depend on the ability to fly aircraft over hostile territory with impunity. This path is politically difficult because it requires admitting that adversaries have caught up technologically and that American military supremacy is no longer guaranteed. Path 3. The United States accepts a more restrained foreign policy that avoids military confrontation with peer or near-peer adversaries. This would mean diplomatic engagement with Iran rather than military threats, acceptance of regional power balances rather than attempts to reshape them through force, and a focus on defending core American interests rather than maintaining global hegemony. This path is the most realistic given the strategic realities, but it is also the most politically unpalatable because it represents a fundamental shift in America's role in the world. I think we are moving toward path 3, whether American leaders are willing to admit it or not. The strategic realities are forcing a de facto policy of restraint even if the rhetoric remains aggressive. The United States did not strike Iran after the drone attack on U.S. forces in Jordan that killed 3 American soldiers. The United States has not escalated military involvement in Yemen, despite ongoing Houthi attacks on shipping. And the United States has not followed through on repeated threats to take military action against Iranian nuclear facilities. These are not signs of strength. They are signs of recognition that the costs of military action have become prohibitive. The S-600 transfer to Iran makes this reality even more stark. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if American air power is no longer dominant in the Middle East, how does that affect U.S. ability to defend allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia? Second, if Russia is willing to provide its most advanced weapons to Iran, what prevents similar transfers to China, North Korea, or other adversaries? Third, if the cost of military action against Iran has become unacceptable, does that mean Iran can pursue nuclear weapons without facing military consequences? Tell me in the comments what you think the United States does next. Tell me if you believe American military technology can overcome the S-600 challenge, or if we are witnessing a permanent shift in the balance of power. Tell me if you think diplomacy with Iran is possible, or if the United States is committed to a confrontation it can no longer win. We will keep tracking every development in Russia, Iran, and the air defense revolution that is reshaping global military power. That is what the Professor Marandi Report does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand why American military dominance is being challenged and what that means for the future of international security. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, and we will see you in the next analysis.